Victor's story, take one. My name is Victor, I'm 35 years old, and I was born in Velikiye Luki in the Pskov region of Oblast, Russia.
I'm heading south to Christchurch in New Zealand to meet Victor. He was adopted from Velikiye Luki, a town in western Russia. For years, he's been searching for answers about where he came from and who his birth parents are. It's a story with deep roots and questions still waiting to be answered.
So Velikiye Luki is a small town in Russia. It's about 500 kilometers south of St. Petersburg and about 500 kilometers west of Moscow. The orphanage in Velikiye Luki, I don't have any memories from it, but what I do have is photographs. So I'm really lucky to have had a collection of photographs that my adoptive parents were given. And from that, the building's quite small. It's got a play area, a hall with a mural in it. There's a playground outside, out the back of it, quite a colourful playground. And it's a brick kind of building, and it's surrounded by taller buildings around the outside. I'm not too sure how many adoptees were in the orphanage. I think there was around about 30 potentially, but I don't have exact numbers.
Victor was adopted at the age of 4.5 by a couple from New Zealand. Before that, he had spent his early years in an orphanage, a place that years later would become the starting point in his search for his birth family.
I arrived in Auckland in 1993, and I grew up in Mount Albert, up in kind of central Auckland. My parents in Auckland, my mother worked in banking and my father was a taxi driver in the city. From what they tell me, I had no issues bonding with them. I had no issues kind of connecting with them. I got along with them really, really well right from the bat. And yeah, I have lots of fond memories of, in the earlier days, my father, when I lived in Auckland, would often take me to Auckland Zoo, and that was a way that we connected a lot, going to the zoo together, enjoying animals, and taking me out to see cool places.
Though his story began in Russia, Victor's earliest memories were made in New Zealand, a place that shaped his sense of belonging and home.
Because I didn't have any memories from being in Russia, I very much felt like a Kiwi. Growing up as a Kiwi, doing a lot of the Kiwi classic things, having barbecues, going to the beach, burning my feet on the beach, all those kind of things, very much felt like a Kiwi growing up.
Victor's childhood was a mix of familiar comforts and unanswered questions. While his parents always made him aware of his beginnings, there were still parts of his story that remained unknown to him.
With regards to my adoption, my parents were very open to me about it, and they actually recall not having to tell me I was adopted. And I think that's happened, or I think I've heard of that happening before. I never had to ask, was I adopted? I kind of always knew.
Knowing he was adopted was one thing, but in his early school years, Victor began to wonder more about the story behind it.
The first time I think I remember asking around about it, I was probably around 7 or 8 years old. I think I was asking about it in terms of why was I put in an orphanage and that kind of thing. And my parents were really open about it. The challenge we had is we just had limited information. So we knew, I was kind of told that I was put in an orphanage at around about 4 months old. And we didn't know exactly why the reason. It wasn't kind of recorded in the information we had, but we had kind of assumed that it was because we only had information around the fact that I had a birth mum. There wasn't any information around my birth father. And so the understanding was that she was probably in a difficult situation, and she probably thought my best chances was to be put in an orphanage, under the hope that at least I'm going to get food every day, I'm going to have shelter, and then maybe the possibility for me to be adopted and to have a better life. So that was the only information we had. And so I guess from a very early age, I just accepted that there wasn't any more information to go off, so yeah.
Victor grew up knowing so little about where he came from, but that never defined him. As an adult, he found purpose in teaching science and creativity in photography.
I'm really, really passionate about photography. I started photography quite a long time ago. I remember doing it in high school. I kind of like to be the behind the scenes kind of guy. Like I don't like to be the most important person in the room. And so photography was a space where I could be part of other things, but I can kind of hide behind the camera. I can feel a little bit awkward, I guess, in large social settings sometimes. I don't always like having to do a lot of small talk, but I still like to go to events. So photography was a nice way to still enjoy those, but I could kind of hide behind the camera in some ways.
Victor took his love for photography with him in 2016, returning to Velikiye Luki, Russia for the first time since being adopted. He revisited his orphanage and set out with the hope of finding his birth mother.
I was excited to go back. I guess a little bit like excited nerves and anticipation in terms of what am I going to find? What am I going to see at the orphanage? Is it going to spark any memories for me? And just excited to explore Russia for the first time. From early on, I knew I had very limited information on my birth history. And most of that because you'll know that orphanages at that time, we didn't have computers, so everything was paper-based. And also, I believe it's pretty voluntary in terms of the information that orphanages keep, in terms of the information that they ask or the information that's handed over.
During this trip to his orphanage, Victor met a woman named Ludmila who offered to help him in a search. Hoping to find out what had happened to his birth mother, he worked with Ludmila, a translator, to help uncover any new details.
I got in contact with Ludmila, and so I think I'd contacted ICANS and I had mentioned, hey, I'm interested to go back to Russia. Who do I talk to? How do I do that process? And ICANS was really, really helpful with that and really helpful with getting me in touch with Ludmila, who was a lady on the ground in Velikiye Luki who had actually worked on my adoption case. About 20 years had passed at this point, and she was my last connection to the village that I was from. So the other thing I was kind of thinking in the back of my head was if she had moved away or if she had passed away, she was my main link of getting back to my town. She knew the orphanage, she'd been there. So I also wanted to make sure I made use of that opportunity before maybe she had moved on. So because I was going back, I thought, hey, let's ask Ludmila, is there actually any more information? She'd managed to find a bit more information that I guess hadn't been communicated to me in the past, which was really, really cool. And so she was trying to go and dig up the information, I guess, on my birth mum. So we had a full name for my birth mum, and she was looking into that. And that process had started before I had left for Russia, and then it had continued. So I was still in communications with her while I was in St. Petersburg. And she had mentioned to me that she'd found 3 women who had had the same name as my birth mum. And I think she'd said like one was too old, one was maybe too young, and then one was about the right age that she thought, but she'd lived quite far away in a different village. And so she didn't really have, she made the impression that the information wasn't that concrete or wasn't that known. And I guess for me, because it was quite far away and because the information it didn't sound rock solid, I was a little bit hesitant to follow those up, I guess, because I had limited time as well. So I chose not to explore those avenues. I chose not to go to those villages. I chose not to go where she thought this lady who could have been was buried. I chose not to go there, mostly because I just wasn't confident that the information was accurate. I had this photo and I wanted to take this photo, and I was really hoping that I'd be able to hold the photo up in this exact spot where I was 20 years ago and have my photo taken in that exact same spot. Even though I have no memories of this, I was standing in that spot 20 years ago. And for me, it was a real surreal moment. Because I don't have memories of it, it could have easily never happened. But I had this photographic evidence that it did happen, and I could hold it up there and think, man, 20 years ago, I was standing in that exact same spot. So for me, that was quite exciting and quite a cool moment of being like, yeah, this is real. I was actually standing here. So very thankful that I had those photos, that I could do that. In a real kind of funny sense, in some ways it felt like it hadn't actually changed that much. They still had the mural there. There was numbers on the building that was still there. The only difference was like a fence in the back of the orphanage where the playground was that had been removed. But other than that, it kind of felt like it had been pretty unchanged, which is probably what you'd expect in this kind of small town in Russia.
Victor left Russia with new memories, built from his return to the orphanage where his life began, but no clarity about his birth mother. Once back in New Zealand, he didn't stop searching And even with the questions that remained, he never lost sight of just how lucky he was to have the life he's built here.
So when I came back to New Zealand, very much felt appreciated for the culture that we have here, the way we live, the houses that we live in. So very much, I guess, just reinforced how incredible my life is here in New Zealand. I also recognized like, hey, this is a place that I'd like to potentially spend more time in, and I'd love to go back again. I'd love to take my wife Anna back sometime, and I'd love to take Nikolai, my son, back at some point and show him, hey, this is your heritage, this is your culture as well. You're part of this through my connection, so I'd love to take him back at some point.
As Victor looked ahead to one day returning to Russia with his family, questions about his past still lingered. He'd left without any real answers about his birth mother, but his story was far from over. Months later, I started digging deeper, reaching out to the translator Victor had connected with, revisiting the names of the 3 women who had been linked to his birth mother, and going through everything Victor had shared with me. I also contacted several people in the villages he had noted down. Sadly, any links to his birth father drew a blank. However, Victor had also done an ancestry DNA test, and I was curious to see if that might uncover any new connections. It's been months of searching, but I finally have an update for Victor. Along with his DNA results, I have some answers about his birth mother. So Victor, I've gone back, and I know it's been some time, but I've gone back and started a bit of research, and I first want to begin with your ancestry DNA results and the percentages that have come up.
Yeah, cool.
So surprisingly, at the top of the list, I have Baltics at 32%. Now what came up under as 21% was Anatolia.
Yep, yeah, that's interesting.
Now the Balkans is the one that's under this with 18%.
Okay, yep.
So at 16%, we've got Central and Eastern Europe.
Oh, interesting.
Now the one under this that did surprise me as well was the 7%, which is Southern Italy.
Nice, happy about that. Yeah, that's great.
And then under this is where we have Russia at only about 5%.
Oh wow, yeah, that's surprisingly low, eh? I guess it's quite a surprising result. Yeah, it just kind of makes me wonder even more so about like the history of my family. If it's so low for me, I guess that, I don't know, must mean maybe only one of my parents was from Russia, and maybe the other parent had come in from another country, and that's influenced the genetics there. But yeah, that's kind of surprising.
As well as showing Victor his DNA results, there's another piece to his story, one that's far more personal. It's time to share the news about his birth mother. I've gone back and done some more digging on your birth mother, Ludmila.
Yeah.
And I know that there was one link that you brought up about this woman who may have passed away when you went back in 2016.
Yeah.
Now I can confirm that this is indeed your birth mother.
Oh, right.
And that she actually passed away back in the year 2000.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So quite a long time ago.
Yeah. Yep.
Now with this research, I was able to find out that she was placed into a nursing home back in 1996, nearby to where you visited in your orphanage as well.
Yeah.
And this is not that long after when you were adopted.
Yeah.
All those years ago. And I've been able to track down a caretaker who looked after her up until she passed away.
Yeah, wow, cool.
And she's keen to get in touch with you as well.
Yeah.
And this caretaker has openly said that she's wanting to help you understand more about what happened before she passed away, where she is buried now, and if you can go back over there and revisit that, hopefully you can go and visit her gravesite as well.
I guess one of the questions I have around is like, yeah, not knowing how old she was when she passed away, once I found out that's what's happened to her. And then also interested to know, like, yeah, when did she have me? Was she young? Was she older? And then the circumstances around why she was in the care facility. So yeah, if I'm able to get in touch with the caregiver, that's a very valuable find.
Absolutely. I know that this wasn't exactly the most positive news about your birth mother, but I hope that this is going to be a sort of sense of closure for you.
Yeah, because I guess there's always that question, and when I went back in 2016 and connected with Ludmila, who worked on my adoption case there, I guess the hope for me with that was to try and find, if I was able to connect with my mother, and to give her closure, just letting her know that I think she made the right decision putting me in an orphanage, because as a result, I've had such an incredible life. I've got such incredible, loving parents, and none of my life now would look like what it does if that hadn't happened, if she hadn't made that decision.
For Victor, this was never only about getting answers. It's about understanding the story he's been piecing together his whole life. Finally learning about his heritage and learning about his birth mother.
Yeah, so I've really appreciated the chance to share my story. And I think a big one for me is being able to talk to someone who is able to kind of get on the ground level and find out a bit more accurate information. I guess I'd really like to encourage other adoptees to share their story, because you never know if you're going to be able to make that connection. And I think a big one for me is just having clarity on what's happened and having concrete information. So that's been really helpful. So I'd really encourage any other adoptees to dig deeper and share your story.